I'm Carla Schaefer, designer for Antiques Beads, and I'll be demonstrating how to make a Kumihimo bracelet using a square plate. The materials used in this project will be a Kumihimo squared plate. I'm going to be using 2 colors of rat tail. You will also need 2 terminator or ribbon clamp ends. You will also need 2 jump rings and a clasp or a toggle. You will need to use some kind of a weight. You'll need a measuring tape. You'll need Zap-A-Gap and 2 pairs of pliers. The first thing we're going to do is load the plate, as we have done in all of our Kumihimo videos so far. And in this case, a flat bracelet is going to take a little less rat tail than when we do a round one. And I'm using 2 different colors, and I'm using 4 of one color and 6 of another. This is a 10 warp pattern. And in this case, you probably should only need to double your length, so a 7-inch bracelet would be 14 inches. However, I went ahead and add a little extra because I'm going to do an overhand knot in here, so I actually cut my threads 20 inches long, which is going to be plenty, but I want to go ahead and weave more than, or braid more than I need for when we finish it, and I'll explain that at that time. But for now, I'm just going to gather up all my ends together, and I'm going to run them through my jump ring with my weight, and I'm going to tie an overhand knot. And then we're going to run all this through the plate. And we're going to load the 4 white ones on the bottom and the 6 at the top. And I'm just going to place them in their slots here. We're starting with the 3 and going over to the 8 slot. You can rearrange them so that you're hand wrap. Okay. And then for the 4 at the bottom, I'm going to do just the same as I did here. I'm going to center it up. We're going to start with the 14, 15, 16, and 17 here. Now the white might be kind of hard to see here. And then I'm going to tighten everything up, and this is a very, very simple pattern. And I actually find it just a little more easier to do once I figured it out, found it easier to do than the round one. So what we're going to do first is we're going to take these 2 middle strands right here, and we want this to cross over. So we're going to take the 6 and we're going to cross it over to the E position, the capital E position. And I'm going to take the 5 and put it over here in the lowercase e. And you always want this to cross over, and it will really take more shape when we get going. And then what we're going to do is we're going to work half the plate at a time. So what we're going to do is we're going to work this half, these 2 strings, and this half here, and then this half. So what we're going to do is going to take the bottom and go up, then take this one and bring it down to that position, up and then down. And then we're going to take this one and we're going to bring it home. I'm going to come over here, and this is also a good way to, if you can, use your left and your right hand. It might help you. So you bring it up, bring it down, bring it up, and you bring it down, and then you bring it home. And then you start again. So now you've got your threads repositioned. Now your 4 white threads are up here with 2 purple on the sides, and then 4 down here. You always come back to the way you started. So then again, you take this one and cross it over. Here's where you're going to see more of that crossover than when you began. You said that you always want this little cross here. And you're going to bring it up and bring it down. You don't have to turn your plate or anything, but tension in this is just a little more tricky, and I find once it gets started, I'll show you, and then bring this home, how you can make sure it's tight enough. And again, we've started again. Now here, where I'm getting a little pulled, I like to pull on these ends here, end ones. And sometimes I'll just give it a yank down here to get it pulled nice and tight. And again, we're going to start again from the center. Going to cross over. And we're going to go up and down. Real simple pattern. And I'm doing this with 2 colors so you can see how the pattern emerges, but you can do it with multiple colors or a solid. And then we'll, going forward, do some other patterns. And again, I'm going to give that a tug here and pull this tighter and press. And bring it home. And you might be able to see a little bit of the pattern now as it's coming out, but I do have one that I've got mostly done, and we'll start from that one. This is the one that I have almost completely done, and I am going to do a couple of stitches and show you again. This very simple how it's done. And once your plate gets a little more broken in, it's not quite as tight to get those in and out. And here, as it's getting a little off, again, as it gets looser, it's easier to pull this and tighten this up. I like to pull on these ends so I can see it kind of get straight here. On those ends, I mean the ends, I mean these 2 outsides. But as you can see, this is how it looks when it's coming out. And I've got well more than what I need for a bracelet. So I'm going to show you how I end this. I'm going to use, there's a couple of different ways to do this, but I'm going to use Zap-A-Gap. I'm going to just drop it on my ends here so that they stay. And even from the bottom here, I'm going to just make sure that when I take this off the loom, it's not going to come apart. And this is another reason why I wanted to give a little more than I actually need, because this is going to be waste right here. So I've got that glued, so I know I can take it off the plate. You can see it's nice and hard there, so it won't come apart. And then I'm going to show you how to figure out the correct length and how to trim this up. Okay, I've got the bracelet laid out, and the first one I did, I actually didn't cut it quite right. In fact, this is really long. So what I wanted to do now is kind of get a more exact measurement, and I want to probably cut this, since I'm adding these ribbon clamps and clasps, probably need to cut it about 6.5 inches, maybe even a little shorter. But I'm going to do this one at 6.5, and this is why I wanted to have this extra on the end and even on this end. And I'm going to take it right here, and I'm just going to put a little line of Zap-A-Gap here. And then I'm going to cut it above this glue line. Now I'm only going to do one end at a time. So I've got this glued, and I'm going to go ahead and just kind of bring it around just to be sure. And then we'll cut this. right above the glue line. And so we still got a good edge on it, and if you feel like you need to dab some Zap a Gap on that, it'll be fine. But when we put it in the crimp end, or the ribbon crimp ends, we'll be able to finish that off too with some glue. So then I'm going to lay it back down and measure. And again, I'm going to run a little glue along the line here. And then I'm going to cut this. I'm going to make sure it's nice and even as it's going to go in those crimp ends. Now this one I feel like maybe I cut it just a little too much, so I'm going to go ahead and put a little glue on my end here just to keep everything together until I get it in my crimp end. And then we'll be ready to add the clamps. I did open up the terminators or the ribbon clamp ends just a little bit, use some chain nose pliers and round nose pliers just to make sure that I would be able to fit it over the end of my work here. And I can. And what I like to do is I'm going to go ahead and do, just for extra measure, I'm going to add a little glue to the end. And then I'm going to take the terminator and slide it down on the end. Put it in position. Then you can take, it's probably best to use nylon jaw pliers, but you can use chain nose pliers, and just crimp the finding. It has little teeth on one side. And also when this, if your ends come out like this, it's also, you can trim that up. Since we put glue on it, it'll actually, can actually trim those up a little bit, and we'll do that at the end. And then we'll do that for the other side. Just want to make sure that it fits. There is somewhat on this pattern a front and a back. You can see this little ridge here, so that would, to me, would be the back. And I like to try to put the teeth of the Terminator on the back side. I'm going to add this one. It fits. I'm going to add a little more glue. I'm going to slide this on. And again, use my pliers. Now we can add the jump rings and the clasp. In this case, I'm going to use a toggle. But as I said before, we can trim this little edge up right here. Just going to little snip, and it's going to clean that up. I'm going to take a jump ring. And open that. Add it to the end of the loop of the Terminator. Add the clasp. Of course, if you make this a little too short, you can also add an extension and a trigger clasp or whatever you like on here. And close this one. And then you've got a flat Kumihimo bracelet.